Welcome to Ali and Shadow. If you love epic sci-fi stories where humanity shines, you're in the right place. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. For thrilling HFY adventures, join us and be part of the journey. The fugitive. In the market, Cade walked through the dusty market, his boots kicking sand. With every step, the air smelled like smoke, rust, and old meat. Traders shouted in strange languages, selling broken machines, glowing fruits, and even live creatures in cages. This place was not meant for humans. Most people here were alien, many with horns, fur, or scales, but Cade had been here before. He kept his head low and his coat tighter, hiding the weapons under it. He just wanted spare parts, nothing more. But then he saw her. She was crouched behind a crate, shaking. Her skin was light silver, her hair tangled and full of dust, her eyes large and violet, locked onto Cade's. For a moment she didn't move, then she crawled forward and grabbed his leg. "Please," she whispered, "don't turn." "Man," Cade froze. The nearby traders watched, one of them pointing toward her. "That's Vexor's slave," a growling voice said. "He'll pay for her return." The girl pulled herself up and pressed against Cade's chest. She smelled like fear and smoke. "I'll give you my body," she begged. "Anything, just don't let them take me." Cade looked down at her, then around the market. Eyes were watching, hands were reaching for weapons. "Get up," he said firmly, pulling her to her feet. She flinched, but obeyed, expecting to be dragged away. Instead, Cade turned, wrapped his coat around her, and walked off quickly. The traders yelled behind them, but no one dared to stop a human with fire in his eyes. Cade didn't speak until they reached the edge of the market. Then he stopped near a small hover bike. "You're lucky I was in a good mood," he muttered, helping her onto the back seat. She stared at him, confused. "You're not going to claim me?" she asked. Cade climbed on and started the engine. "No," he said. "Hold on." Bike roared through the dry desert plains. Wind whipped through their hair. She held him tightly, not from fear, but because she had nowhere else to go. They reached Cade's small home, built into a rock cliff. It was quiet, hidden, and warm inside. He gave her food, water, and a blanket. She looked at the food like it was poison, unsure if it was a trick. "I don't want anything from you," Cade said, placing a medkit on the table. "But you're bleeding." She looked down at her knees and arms, dried cuts and bruises everywhere. "I don't understand," she whispered. "Why help me?" Cade sighed and knelt beside her, opening the kit. "Because no one else will," he replied. She let him clean her wounds, wincing but staying quiet. Her body was thin and fragile, bones poking under skin. "My name is Silha," she said softly. "I was taken when I was a child." Cade nodded, but didn't ask for more. She was safe now, and that was enough for tonight. He pointed to a bed in the corner. "You sleep there." "What about you?" she asked. "I sleep outside sometimes," he said, walking out and closing the door behind him. Sila stared at the closed door for a long time, waiting for him to come back in and change his mind. He didn't. That night, she didn't dream of chains or cages. For the first time, she dreamed of silence and stars. In the morning, she woke to the smell of food. Cade had made some kind of soup from dried roots and protein packs. He handed her a bowl. Without a word, "Thank you," she said, her voice shaking. Cade just nodded and sat down across from her, eating quietly. Silha kept looking at him, waiting for the moment when kindness would turn into ownership. It never came. After breakfast, she stood and began to clean the table. Cade raised an eyebrow but didn't stop her. I want to earn my place, she said. Even if it's just sweeping the floor. Cade finally smiled a little. You don't owe me anything, he said, but if it helps you feel better, go ahead. They didn't talk much that day, but the silence was calm, not cold. At night, she sat by the window looking up at the stars. Cade watched her from a distance, knowing that she was still scared, still healing, but also knowing this was 20 fix, but also knowing this was just the beginning. Somewhere out there, the slaver Vexor was looking for her, and Cade knew that peace would not last long, but for now the fugitive girl had shelter, warmth, and a chance to breathe again, and maybe, just maybe, that was enough. The price of shelter. The sky above the cliffs turned deep red. Shadows stretched long across the sand. Inside the small home, Selah sat quietly, holding a warm mug in both hands. She had never tasted anything like this drink. It was bitter and strange, but it wasn't spoiled, poisoned, or meant to keep her weak. Cade stood at the door, looking out at the horizon. He hadn't said much all morning, but he hadn't told her to leave either. That was already more than she'd known in years. She looked down at her clothes, still torn and dirty, her silver skin marked by bruises and chain scars. Do you have something else to wear? She asked quietly. Cade nodded once and pulled out a folded shirt and trousers from a storage box. They belonged to someone I knew, he said, handing them over. You can take them. Selah took them gently, as if touching something sacred. Thank you, she whispered, then went behind a curtain to change. When she stepped out, the clothes hung a little loose but covered her properly. She stood straighter, no longer shaking. Cade glanced at her. Better, he said simply. She nodded, then asked, why are you helping me? He didn't answer right away. Instead, he moved to a panel and flipped a switch. A small screen lit up, showing the news from the outer colonies. There it was, her face grainy and distorted, but still clear enough. Wanted, runaway property of traitor Vexor. The screen read. A reward of 10,000 credits flashed below it. Selah's heart sank. She backed away from the screen, her breathing sharp. They'll find me, she whispered. They always do. Cade turned off the screen and looked her in the eyes. Not while you're here, he said. Selah looked at him with disbelief. You could sell me and be rich. I'm not interested, he replied. You're not for sale. Those words hit her harder than any slap. She sat down, slowly, blinking fast. No one's ever said that before, she said. Not even my own people. Cade looked away, his jaw tight. That's their shame, not yours. She didn't know what to say, so she stayed quiet. Days passed and they began to fall into a rhythm. Cade fixed things, cleaned parts, and traded food packs for fuel cells. Selah swept the floor, cleaned the tools, and cooked what little she could from the dry rations. One evening she came to him holding a small cloth pouch. This was hidden under my collar, she said. I saved it for years. Inside were 3 small gemstones, scratched but still valuable. I want you to have them, she said, offering them in both hands. For helping me. Cade didn't take them. Instead, he closed her hands around them and pushed them back toward her. Keep them, he said. You might need them more than I do someday. She looked at him, confused. Are all humans like you? Cade shook his head slowly. Not all, he said, just the good ones. That night, Selah lay awake, staring at the Ceiling, her body was warm, her stomach full, but her heart felt heavy. Why was he doing this really? The next morning, she decided to test him. She walked up to Cade while he was working on a broken solar panel. She touched his arm gently. If you want me, she said, I won't fight it. He looked up slowly, saw the fear behind her eyes and stepped back. No, he said calmly, don't offer that to me. Again she blinked, startled. But that's what men want, isn't it? Cade stood straight, wiping his hands on a cloth. What I want is for you to feel safe, he said. That's all. Selah turned away, ashamed. Her hands trembled. But not from fear, from something deeper. Cade didn't touch her, didn't yell, didn't even walk away. He just returned to fixing the panel, letting silence say what words could not. That night, as she prepared dinner, she looked around the small shelter. It wasn't much, but it didn't feel like a cage. For the first time, she hummed a small tune from her childhood, and for the first time in his long years, Cade smiled without pain. But peace didn't last long. The next day, an old hover truck passed near the cliff. Two rough-looking bounty hunters stepped out and knocked on the door. Cade opened it, calm but ready. His hand rested near the hidden blaster at his waist. Looking for a runaway, one of them said, flashing a halage of Silha, worth good credits. Cade didn't even glance at the image. No runaways here, he said coldly. Just me and ghosts. The hunters looked past him, trying to peek inside. You don't mind if we take a look? The taller one asked. Cade smiled without warmth. I do mind, he said, unless you want to join the ghosts. The tension grew thick, but the hunters stepped back, smuttering curses. As they drove away, Cade closed the door slowly, locking every bolt. Behind a hidden panel, Selah sat holding her breath, eyes wide with fear. Cade sat down beside her and said quietly, they'll be back. Silha reached out and touched his hand, not in fear but in trust. I don't want to run anymore, she said. I want to stand with you. Cade nodded once, his grip tightening around hers. Then they began planning how to disappear for good, fight or flight. Asterisk. Silha stood by the window, her fingers tracing the glass slowly. The cliffs looked calm, the air still, but inside her chest, a storm had started. Cade sat sharpening a blade on the table, not speaking, not smiling. His face was calm, but his eyes held fire. They both knew the bounty hunters would return. They had packed bags, hidden routes marked in old paper maps. A smuggler Cade once trusted could help them disappear across the border zone. But they had to move fast, and they had to be smart. We leave tonight, Cade said, under the moon through the canyon. Silha nodded, but her hands kept shaking. She had never run free on her own feet before, never planned her own escape. Cade noticed. He stepped closer and placed a small stone in her hand. Press this if you panic, he said. It's nothing special, just a trick I use. Makes you focus, keeps your mind here. She clutched the stone tightly. It's as if it were magic. That night they left the house, both wearing cloaks. Cade carried a rifle across his back. Silha carried nothing but fear and trust. The canyons were dark, the path narrow and dangerous. Creatures moved in the shadows, watching, waiting. Silha stepped carefully, but her foot slipped on a loose rock. She gasped and grabbed Cade's arm. Easy, he whispered, steadying her. Just breathe, she nodded, breathing slowly, holding the stone tight. Suddenly a light flashed above them, a ship, no markings, low and slow, searching. Cade grabbed her hand. and pulled her under a rocky outcrop. They crouched low, not moving. Voices echoed from above, metallic and cruel. She's worth 10,000 alive, 5 if wounded, one voice said. She won't get far, not with those legs. Another laughed. Sela's eyes welled up, her body shaking, but Cade held her hand firmly, his thumb moving in small circles. They waited in silence, hearts pounding, until the voices faded. Once the ship passed, they moved again, faster this time, but before they could reach the next ridge, a sharp sound rang out, a laser shot. Cade pushed Sylha to the ground just as a bolt sizzled past her head. Run, he shouted, turning and firing back. Sela scrambled down the rocks, slipping in. Crawling, Cade covered her, shooting at shadows, but the hunters were trained. One of them leaped from a ledge and slammed into Cade's side. They rolled, punching, kicking. The other aimed at Sela, grabbing her hair. You think you're free, the man hissed. You belong in chains, Sylha screamed, but in that scream came something else. Rage. She kicked wildly, then bit down on the hunter's arm, hard enough to draw blood. He howled and let go, and Sylha grabbed a rock, smashing it into his head with all her strength. He dropped, groaning. Meanwhile, Cade broke free and slammed his elbow into his attacker's jaw. Then he grabbed the fallen rifle and aimed. Touch her again and you die, he said. The first hunter crawled away, bleeding. The second followed, cursing and dragging his stunned friend. Cade pulled Sylha into his arms, checking her body for injuries. You're okay, he whispered. You're okay. Sylha didn't answer. She was crying, but not from pain. I fought back, she said through tears. I've never fought back before. You were brave, Cade said. More than most. They found a small cave to rest for the night. Cade lit a small fire, while Sylha stared into the flames. I thought I was broken, she said, but maybe I'm not. Cade didn't speak. He just placed a blanket over her shoulders. They sat in silence, letting the fire warm more than just their bodies. The next day they reached the smugglers' outpost, a hidden bunker buried in a sand dune. A woman named Zarin greeted them, a scar across her face, eyes sharp and questioning. Cade, I didn't think you were still breathing, she said with a grin. Still breathing, Cade replied, but need your help. Zarin looked at Sylha, then at the bruises on her arms. This her, she asked, the one worth 10,000. Cad's grip tightened on his rifle. Don't, he said, she's not for sale. Zarin raised her hands. Relax, I don't trade people anymore, she said. I've got a ship leaving at dawn. 2 seats. No names asked. Sela looked at Cade. What happens after? Cade looked at her, his eyes soft. That's up to you, he said. No one owns your future now. For the first time, Sela smiled, not because she had to, not because it pleased someone, but because she truly felt free. As night fell, they sat inside the bunker, waiting for the stars to guide their way out. This wasn't just escape, it was the beginning of a life that finally belonged to her. Freedom's promise. The stars blinked above the desert, soft and distant. The smugglers' ship rested quietly beneath a tarp of thermal fabric, waiting for its final jump before dawn. Inside the bunker, Sela lay awake on a thin mat, staring at the ceiling made of rusted metal and cracked cement. Cade was nearby, checking supplies for the journey, water packs, heat pills, forged identity tag. Zarin sat by the console, sipping old coffee and humming a song Sela didn't know. Everything was quiet, too quiet. Sela sat up, her heart uneasy, her hands still trembled from the fight in the canyon, but more than fear it was something else now. It was change. She stepped outside into the cold night. Her feet sank softly into the sand, and she walked toward the ship. Its hull was scarred from old battles, but it looked strong. This was freedom, the thing she dreamed of, in cages, behind bars, beneath masters' feet. But something in her chest hurt. Kay joined her a few minutes later, standing beside her. Without a word, "She's ready," he said, nodding to the ship. "Zarian says she'll take us to the free zone, start over." Silha nodded slowly but didn't smile. "Cade," she said softly, "when I was with Vexor every day I asked myself, why me? Why am I alive? What's the point if I'm just a thing?" He looked at her, not speaking, letting her finish. "And now I'm here, and I don't know what I'm supposed to do with freedom," she whispered. "I've only ever been someone's property." Cade placed a hand on her shoulder, firm and steady. "You start small," he said. "You breathe without asking. You speak without permission. You choose when to eat, when to sleep, and when to be silent." Silha looked up at him, her violet eyes shining in the starlight. "And if I choose to stay by your side?" she asked. "Not as a debt, not because I owe you, but because I want to." Cade smiled gently, a rare and honest smile. "Then I'd be honored," he said. Back in the bunker, Zarian called out, "We've got movement on the scanner." Cad's smile faded. He pulled Silha close and rushed inside. Zarian pointed at the screen, a fast-approaching signal. "One ship, no ID, but closing fast. That's Vexor," Silha whispered, her body tensing. Zarian nodded. "I'd bet credits on it." Cade grabbed his gear, rifle loaded, knife strapped to his leg. "We need to go now," he said. "Oh, no time for hiding." Zarian opened the launch doors, sand rushing in as the ship's engines powered on. Silha followed Cade into the cargo hold, but just before the ramp lifted, she paused and turned around. The sky was lighting up with the glow of Vexor's ship. "He'll follow," she said. "He won't stop." Cade walked back and stood beside her. "Let him follow," he said. "He'll never find who you've become." As the ramp sealed shut, the ship lifted into the sky. Engines roared, sand flew in every direction. From high above, the planet looked small, a dusty memory shrinking behind them. Silha sat by the window, watching it vanish. Her heart still pounded, but this time it wasn't fear, it was hope. In the ship's sleeping quarters, she found Cade sitting on a crate, wrapping his hand where it was bruised. She knelt in front of him, taking the cloth and wrapping it gently herself. "I never said thank you," she said, "not properly." "You don't have to," he replied. "You owe me nothing, but I want to," she said, "because you didn't just save me, you reminded me that I'm still a person." Cade looked into her eyes. "You always were, Silha. I just helped you. Remember?" She leaned in then, not desperate, not afraid, but full of her own choice. Her forehead touched his, warm and calm. "I don't offer my body," she whispered. "I offer myself, all of me, because I want to, not because I have to." Cade closed his eyes, holding her gently, and for the first time in both their lives, they felt like home. When the ship landed in the free zone days later, no one asked questions. No one called her a slave. No one called him a traitor. They were just two people walking into a new future, hand in hand, and in a galaxy filled with cruelty, betrayal, and pain. That simple act of kindness had changed everything. The end.